All right, another installment of my speaker project. And I screwed up last time. I'm gonna take a look at what's going on outside. We just had the leaves blow. Looking out my basement door right here. Had a whole bunch of leaves built up by the door, and just had some guys come over and blow them and take them away. A lot of oaks and big trees here. Get this heater going. Yeah, this sound's gonna mess me up here. So I didn't mess. Well, I did mess up. Here's how I goofed up. Which, let me put this on the tripod. I need to make a correction. Not necessarily a correction to the design, but a correction to that soldering that I did earlier. I wasted my time. That's how it works with these things. So where I last left off, I was kind of debating with myself as to where that capacitor should go. And I gave it some thought, and I'm not going to get into the theory of it. The capacitor has to go first. The crossover network has to go first. Then the L pad, okay, and then the speaker, like that. That's how it has to be. This capacitor, in order for it to function properly as a crossover, wants to see this as that constant load. By putting the capacitor in between the L pad, the impedance of this becomes variable, so to speak. Like a variable. And then as the L pad changes and this changes, it messes up the whole thing. Suffice it to say, I'm not going to get into the details. I don't fully understand it myself, but so the capacitor needs to be right off the terminal, but actually needs to be connected to terminal number 3 of the L pad. So I wasted my time earlier. Well, nothing's really a waste of time when you're enjoying yourself, regardless. But doing all this stuff right here was completely unnecessary because I didn't think the design through before I actually started working on it, because I was just so gung-ho about soldering something, getting the glue gun out. So what I'm going to do, fortunately I have like 50 of these capacitors, so I don't even need to care about these caps right here. I'm going to get rid of this thing. Like so. Let's see how strong that glue gun is. Good gracious. That's just a standard off the shelf, Home Depot, Sears, whatever it is, glue gun. Look at that. Wow. Actually pulled some plastic with it, I think. Wow. That glue is stronger than I thought. I mean, this is going to be hidden in the speaker. I don't even need to worry about this, but it did. It actually pulled some plastic off from the compression driver. That's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to hook. I better get that soldering iron heated up. Okay. I'm just going to connect. I want to use this existing wire and just connect them. Make a couple little hooks. Pull them together and pinch them. Well, it's a good damn thing I don't care about this speaker. If I was building something nice, that I really cared about, I'd be pissed. It just goes to show you, get your design completely finished before you start the work. I'm guilty of not doing that in this case, but wow, that's a good mechanical connection right there. That could probably last a decade without even solder. Let me go ahead and get the other tweeter ready while the soldering iron is heating. Like I said, I've got a ton of these things. I bought a mess of them for a tube amp project I was working on, a restoration project. It was a Fisher, what was it, 300B, I think. Is that what it was? Okay. I think this time it's probably wiser to maybe kind of take the X-Acto knife and dig in a little bit. Well, you never want to cut towards you with an X-Acto knife, I'll tell you. I can't. This glue is so strong that it's hard to even dig in with an X-Acto knife. And just get, there we go, just get that started, and hopefully that's enough that I can yank it off. Okay. So this is a real pisser to have to redo this. I mean, really. But at the same time, I learned something. This is a good thing about doing a project that you've never done before. You know, you learn these cool things that you just didn't know. Like in something as simple as and sometimes I'd rather just learn doing it this way by trial and error and just understanding the design and figuring things out. I'd rather do that than just go read some knucklehead's website. Now sometimes you have to. You don't want to experience a learning curve on certain things, but what I learned here is again how an L-pad works, but also that the crossover network comes first before the L-pad. The load that the crossover wants to see is the L-pad connected to the speaker driver itself. And again, that can be shown on paper, but that's just a mess. I don't even feel like doing it, going through that process. But you can kind of look at it and see why that would be the case, because again, if the capacitor is after the L-pad and before the speaker, a capacitor is basically like a variable resistor, kind of, sort of, varying with respect to frequency. And then so that means the L-pad would not be in parallel with a very constant load, and so it wouldn't function to do what it's supposed to do. Okay, let me see if my soldering iron is heated. Alright, I'm going to give it a couple more seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a couple of more capacitors. My bench is getting really messy. It seems to always happen. I'm going to solder the capacitor actually on the, oh god, maybe I shouldn't do any damn thing until I actually mechanically hook this stuff up, physically hook this up in the speaker, but let me just sort of talk through what I'm thinking about doing here. Since the L-pad will be like this, like that, then I think it would be good for the capacitor to be right on the back of it, because one of these leads is going to be connected to number 3. Maybe I'll just go right into number 3. There's no reason I can't. That's number 3 right there. So there's no reason I can't just go right on into number 3 like that. I don't see any reason in the world I can't do that. Again, you know, if this was something I cared about, I'd build a separate crossover board, but hell, for one resistor, I mean, for one capacitor having a crossover board, it just seems excessive for a cheap speaker. So I think I'm gonna go like that for both of them. Is that right? Is it going to number 3? Yes, it does. Number 3 is the input to the L-pad. So I'm going to go ahead and get these started, because once I get the soldering gun heated up, soldering iron heated up, I want to go ahead and do these. And I probably, you know what, to keep buzzing down, I probably want to glue gun these two together too. So I might as well get that warmed up. All right, let's go ahead and get this solder. I don't, you know, there's really no reason for me to even film the process of soldering anything, but since I like to, when I do these projects and I film them, sometimes I just would rather I don't want to be a director or a producer. I just want to film them in one take, because I really don't like fiddling around with image processing software. I just like to do this instead. So I basically take these videos upstairs and I send them right to YouTube and piece the various ones together. You know, I have to occasionally turn it off and stop and put it. They just piece them together back to back, and then it's done. Whatever happens, happens. I mean, whatever I did on the video, I did on the video. It's not okay. You know what? I'm gonna need. There comes a point when I need magnifying glasses, and I'm gonna have to put them on, because man, my eyes are not that good anymore. They never were good. My eyes always sucked. But now they're worse than ever. Okay, it's a good connection. Alright, so that's finished. That didn't take much time to redo. It just looks like a mess, but... And of course, this glue gun up is totally unnecessary. I've just taken these speakers and made them look like a total mess. If anyone ever opens these up, they're going to go, look at that unprofessional pile of crap. But hey. That's because it is unprofessional. My battery just died. The camcorder automatically turned off. Okay, so these are done, and I want to go ahead and solder. I'd actually like to glue gun this first, but I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and solder this on. I'm going to use a little flux on that. I don't really have much of a plan here. I should really be, but I want to get these, I want to get all the wires hooked up to these so I can, once I get these components mounted in the boxes mechanically, then I could just splice together wires. I don't have to go back and do any soldering per se. So that's really what I'm doing here. Okay. So maybe I should go ahead and hook some wires up to these. I think I will while the soldering iron's hot. And that way I have wires hooked up to everything. And so like I say, when I'm done mounting everything, I can just with the woofer off the boxes, I can just hook all the wires up the way they need to get hooked up, and it's done. So I might as well do that while the glue gun is patiently waiting to be heated up. Okay. I don't know how long I'm just going to cut long enough ones. Again, I'm using thin gauge wire here because this is tweeters only, low current. Don't care. Short runs, short distance runs. Not concerned about audiophile grade or quality. More concerned about price. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple. Okay. Some splices here, or some strip the ends. Two. And so this should be it for soldering. Well, yeah, no, this is it because I already have some wires dangling around in the boxes that were to the previous tweeters, so I already have a connection to the terminals. And that's good. So really it's just a matter of when I hook these wires up internally, I'll just use butt connectors. I won't even solder. It's just not necessary for this application. So after I finish this, really the only thing left is drilling holes. Not to downplay it, that's going to be a pain in the butt, but drilling holes, mounting the L pad, figuring out how to mount the horns. Okay. Alright, so like I said, the speakers themselves, the horns already have a couple of leads mounted to them. And I'm going to go ahead and go with, let's see, number one. Now, you know, I think, where's my little, lay things down, I can't find them. My little tiny needle nose pliers, there they are. Okay. So twist, a little hook, make a little hook there. Just tap it with some solder. So the input to the capacitor that is going to be directly from positive from the terminal, from the input to the speaker. And that will go into number 3. So I need 2 more connections. I need one. I'm going to put another wire. I'll figure this out later. Let's go take this one to number 2. Number 2 is the one that's going to go directly to the speaker. Now the speaker, the positive input to the tweeter already has a wire connected to it, but I don't know where I'm going to mount this L-pad, and it might be too far away from the tweeter for the tweeter wire to reach it, so I'll just have to do a splice internally. That's good. That's a nice connection. Well, by my standards it is. And then I'm going to need one more. I'm going to have to label the ends of these wires so that when the L-pad is hooked up, when they're just dangling around there, I want to know which is which. I'll do that later. Alright, well, I guess there's no use in me filming this process, but I don't feel like turning the camera off. Okay. Hopefully my glue gun's warmed up. It is. So I'm going to try to get some glue under here. Okay. I think that'll do it. It's good enough by my standards. It's enough to keep that capacitor from, I got a little glue under it, enough to keep it from vibrating and to stably, mechanically hold it in place. Alright. One down. One more to go. I think this is the last time I'll need to be soldering anything. I think I won't need to be soldering anything after this. I hope not. I really need to get a new soldering iron. My next door neighbor is one of these ham radio guys, and he's got this really expensive soldering iron system that you just set the temperature. I mean, my iron here is a 35 watt iron, and it goes between 15 and 35, and I kind of know what wattage to use, but I've never done things by temperature. He is soldering like surface mount stuff, or where temperature matters, and you want to get the right temperature for the soldering, and you can adjust it. And his soldering iron, man, when he turns it on, it heats up quickly, like almost instantly. But it's a pretty expensive thing, and I work on big stuff and old tube equipment, and I've never needed anything like that. But it seems kind of cool. Kind of like it. I think his soldering iron was a couple $100. It's got a little temperature readout on it. He's over there building some kind of regenerative receiver right now. He was showing me that project yesterday, as a matter of fact. And came over and asked me if I had a 1 microfarad electrolytic cap, and I did not. He said he went down to the local Radio Shack and they didn't have them. That they're not stocking their parts much. I think, like I mentioned before, Radio Shack is ready to just call it quits and go out of business. At least I've been hearing things like that on the news. So I don't think they give a rat's tail anymore what they're stocking, and I don't think anyone cares. Yeah, it's a shame. No longer will there be a store like Radio Shack around. It's funny, when I was growing up, back in the 70s, when I was a kid, I was really into electronics, and there were 2 stores around, 3 actually. 3 brick and mortar stores that you could go buy parts and electronic components and kits and all kinds of cool stuff. One of them was called Lafayette. Lafayette actually had their own brands of electronics too. If you go on eBay and look for Lafayette receivers and tube amps, and the speakers were called Criterion speakers. They're still around. They were just like a Radio Shack, but their equipment was more high end, and they sold ham radio stuff, and they went out of business sometime in the late 70s, like 79 or something like that. And I was sad to see them go, but Radio Shack still stuck around. They were good for parts and little components and odds and ends and things like that. And the other one was the Heathkit. Had them all near me. Heathkit had a store you could walk into and buy stuff. Mostly kits, but parts and tools. And the Heathkit guys, the guys at those stores they knew what they were doing. A lot of them were hams, And you could get advice on things, and they were, whereas Radio Shack guys don't know anything. They don't know much about anything. They know a lot about cell phones these days. That's about it. But Heathkit went out of business after Lafayette. I think they sold the brand to some Chinese outfit, and you can still buy Heathkit crap, but it's not the same company. There are no companies that have any integrity anymore. No one gives a shit about their product much. They give a shit. The only thing companies give a shit about is what happens next week. What happens next year, what happens 2 years down. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. As long as people are happy till next week, that's it. They don't give a shit about their products. I'm really cynical about that, but anyway, so Lafayette went out of business. My first good stereo system was a total Lafayette system. I'll still remember the receiver that I had. I got one of those monster, like Pioneer type receivers. The model number was LR for Lafayette Radio. LR 120 dB. 120 was for 120 watts per channel. dB stood for Dolby. It had Dolby noise reduction for the FM receiver. And monster receiver, big receiver. And then I got some Criterion speakers, which were basically, I think they were made by Pioneer or something. They look like the Pioneer HPM speakers, HPM 100s, things, those classic Pioneers. They kind of look like those. The drivers look the same. So got that. And those speakers, and man, that was the, I remember my dad bought that for me, and that was when Lafayette was going out of business. And the reason why I was able to get that really cool, nice stuff is that they were having a going out of business sale where things were like less than half price. was really cool. So we're done with this. So Radio Shack goes out of business. There's no one left, and I don't know that. I think that current generations are more concerned with their iPad and apps than they are with doing this stuff. I don't think anyone cares about this. I'm surprised I got pretty cynical about a lot of millennials. I'm surprised that any of them even leave their freaking houses or lift a finger. I mean, it's just whatever you can do on an app. That's all they want to do. I got a bad impression. It's probably all wrong, but I'm sure it is. But it's just my impression. You sit around poking on your phone all day is the only thing that's worth doing. No offense. Just what I see on the day-to-day. Okay, so now it's time to figure out how to get these things physically mounted. I'm not going to do that on this video, but let me get the speaker that has the woofer disconnected. Okay. Alright. I don't know where I want to put the L-pad. So, if I were to drill holes through and try to put machine screws through and screw them in, I don't know that I'd be able to reach the other side of this to get the nuts on. That's the thing. So there are nuts that have to go on the other side of this thing, and you got to hold them to. Oh, I know I can get the edges. I don't know about that middle one, maybe. But I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try to screw this in from the inside. Otherwise, I got to cut. You know what? That's the same hole pattern. That's an identical. This horn has an identical hole pattern. I wonder if you're even seeing what I'm seeing. Yeah. This horn has an identical hole pattern to the old cheap piezo that came out of it. That is really something. I wonder if it's the same. It's probably the same. I wonder if it's a standard. Here's the one that came out of it. It's messy, but it's the same size. Look the same, except this one has that plug in the middle, that phase plug thing. But it's probably from the same company. But I'm glad it's the same hole pattern. So what I can do is just drill through. I wasn't going to do this. But I want to just try this real quick before I call it a day. Okay. Get a little vacuum. All right. All right, so this guy. I gotta find some screws now. You know what? As I'm doing this is not working out too well. See, live and learn. As I was doing this, I'm dropping debris into the throat of the horn. And that we don't want to happen. So I'm going to tape it up. I could use the old horn because it's got the same hole pattern, but because, I don't know, because this is the one that's going to go in, I want to be sure that I'm doing everything with this one. So I'm just going to tape up the throat of the horn with a blue electrical painter's tape. Doesn't leave a residue. I'm going to tape that up to make sure nothing drops into it. And that's a good seal right there. Okay. So I wonder, let me find some screws. I'm going to have to look. Okay, I'm going to call it a day on this because I'm going to have to probably buy some machine screws. I want to run some screws through there. And I'm going to need what? 12 of them. 6 for the other speaker. So my first step is to get this mounted. Then once this is mounted, I want to figure out where the L pad's going to go. Ideally, I think I'd like the L pad on the front, but on the top would be good too. No, because then you want to stack things on the speaker. It'd be best on the front, like right there. See if it fits. There's nothing obstructing behind it. But that, now see, it's going to hit the woofer. There's not enough space. It'll hit the woofer here, and then the tweeter next to it, and so it's going to have to be. I think I'm going to put it on the back. You don't want it on the top or the bottom because you might want to stack the speakers. Although it wouldn't matter though because this is flush. I think the top. Yeah, that's flush. The knob doesn't stick out. Okay, I'm rambling. Thanks for watching. I'll pick up next time with the mechanical part. Ciao.